Hey guys, welcome back to Star Super Spa. This is episode 3 of my series where I try makeup from different countries around the world and try and make it work for my features in hopes that maybe you can make it work for yours as well through my explanations. Today we are doing Italian makeup, which is really exciting. I don't think I've ever done Italian makeup before. This is gonna be more of like, I think it's more of northern Italian makeup, like nighttime makeup, very Monica Bellucci style, sultry, dark eyes, nude lip look. And now I think about it, my last two were actually very similar makeup styles, but this is like the Italian version, I guess, so it will definitely be different. I've just set my face with these Milk products, the primer and setting spray, because it's really hot in Hong Kong and I need something that's going to keep a barrier from my sweat and oils and skincare, and then my makeup, because that's going to break it all down if there's nothing stopping it from interacting with my makeup. So I've tried to do a good bit of research on all these countries' makeup that I'm doing, but it's not as easy as you would think to find these explanations or tips for different countries' makeup styles. Because for example, if you search up videos, it shows you the most popular videos, which are typically trends, and the trend that I kept seeing when I searched up Italian makeup was the Monica Bellucci makeup. But I did manage to find a video of this lady who compared French and Italian makeup styles, and through that video I read the comments and listened to a lot of the Italian women who were saying how they would do their makeup and how it's more typical to do makeup in Italy. So I'm kind of going based off of that, but if any Italians are watching this, please let me know what you think of what I've chosen to do and maybe what I could improve on or what I did well. Anyway, I've heard they don't like to use a lot of foundation, and when they do use foundation, it's not glowy. It's always like glowy, dewy skin is not really a trend there. So I'm using my really buildable Lancome Ton Idol Ultra Wear foundation, and this is like, I think it's just like, it says breathable coverage. I would say this is like closer to matte than dewy, so that's what I'm using. It seems that Italian women typically wear really minimal concealer, so I'm gonna try and keep it as minimal as possible while still concealing my dark circles, because they are definitely dark. But I'm not gonna do a lot of highlighting around the face. The focus is definitely gonna be on bronzer. I think we're gonna be using like 3 different forms of bronzer, and we're gonna start off with this Say Sun Melt, and the shade is, I think it's medium bronze, and I'm gonna put quite a bit onto this dense synthetic brush. I get a lot of questions about brushes, and I would say just remember dense and synthetic is for cream, fluffy and more like hair rough kind of brushes are for powders. So I'm just gonna do a mixture of something natural, like where the sun naturally hits me, but also kind of shape the face with the bronzer. So using it slightly as contour as well. But this is kind of like a typical placement that I'm using right here. I personally don't like to do my bronzer very high up. I know that's a big trend right now to do bronzer high up. I don't know if it's a trend in Italy. I don't imagine it is, but people do that to lift their face. But for my face, my jaw takes up quite a bit of my face. Not like a lot, not that you could really tell, but compared to most faces, I would say my jaw takes up a bit more space than the other thirds of my face, which would be my cheekbones and my forehead. And so by placing bronzer and blush too high on my face, I just really maximize the space that my jaw takes up and minimize this part of my face, whereas I personally would like to do the opposite to kind of just create more balance in the face. With blush, I'm literally going to use the tiniest amount of this really natural looking blush and it's a shade that blends in nicely with the bronzer. Nothing too pink, it's just like you would think my face is naturally flushed with this color, because the blush is like by no means the focus of this look. I think in southern Italy they do more blush and more skin, and then in North Italy they do more eyes and like, I think it's a nude lip. They don't love eyeshadow too much, and they like eyeliner and mascara. This is according to my research. Now I'm gonna blend in my concealer, and I don't want to use a sponge just because sponges tend to absorb more product, whereas like a dense brush will help keep the coverage there. And because I don't want to use a lot of concealer, this is not going to be cakey makeup. It's very light layers, very skin-like but not dewy. Then I don't want to add more concealer, so I'm really trying to work with what I've put on and really make a little product go a long way in this style. So I'm not going to be using any powder or anything, but I will use what's left on my powder puff from my last application just to take away the shine from this area, and a little bit in the middle of the brows, just so that it's not giving dewy, it's just giving natural, maybe a little bit more on the matte side. I would say like just a mixture, like something in the middle. It's not matte, but it's not dewy, it's just skin-like and natural. I like to call it soft focus, which is also the name of my consultation service. Shout out to Soft Focus Consultations, which will be in the description below if you want a personalized makeup guide by me. Now moving on to our second bronzing product. You can see this bronzer is very similar to my skin shade. It's definitely not a deep bronzer, and I'm gonna use that kind of as a dual product to, number one, bronze a little bit more, set the bronzer as well, add a different tone to the bronze, as well as almost set the part of my face that I didn't set with my powder puff. And that's just gonna bring even more of a little bit like matte look, take away some shine, and it's just doing many different things for me. And I like to use a big brush for this because it doesn't need to be precise, and I want it to be quite blown out and quite diffuse and unfocused. For my next and deeper bronzer, I would call this a bronzer shade. I'm going to use a more focused fluffy brush, and I'm just going to pat all the excess off because we don't want it to be crazy. And I'm starting with tapping motions to kind of distribute the product, and then I'm going and swirling it. This nice dome shape of the brush really helps create a nice diffusion, and because it's small, it's really a lot easier to focus the product. And we're basically placing all these things in the same area, but because the brushes and the products are different, they will apply differently and create this really nice diffusion of brown on the skin, which I really love using different types of the same product because it just creates a really nice depth to the face without overloading on product. It's like multiple light layers. I'm also using this to define my jawline and kind of utilizing its darkness for contour abilities without having to use a contour, because I don't think that's really the vibe for this look. It's not too face shaping. And then just a touch on the nose as well. And you can see how it's not muddy, it's not imprecise or overblown because we've used different brushes and different products. We have this nice diffusion and really intentional placement of the different bronzers, which just like I love. I'm taking a little bit onto my eye as well. So the eyebrows, they apparently tend to be quite defined and dark, so I'm going to use this shade right here, which is like a dark brown, but it's not black, so it's not going to be like ashy. And I'm going to use this brush set to do the brows. So how I like to do my brows is brush the hairs up And I like to start from the tail. I think it gives the best shape. And I just kind of like to lift the hairs, see where I've plucked, because I pluck my eyebrows very strategically, and just create that line connecting all of the hairs. My eyebrows are quite sparse, so the connecting the hairs is like really important for me to just make them look fuller. I do have a full brow playlist, how I shape them, how I cut them, tweeze them, fill them in, so you guys can check that out. But generally for these looks, I do prefer just like an eyeshadow and a little tiny little angled brush to do the brows, because they're not as natural as I tend to do them on an everyday basis. And definitely like to keep them less dense in the front and more dense towards the tail. And then when I lengthen them, I like to look to the side and just do it like that. Now, I don't believe in most cases you would need to set these eyebrows. Oh my gosh, they're looking like really intense. But my eyebrows are really unruly and like have every type of eyebrow difficulty. So I do have to gel mine down, but not mandatory, I don't think. Now, apparently Italians don't love eyeshadow, but I'm using this eyeshadow stick, which is kind of cheating, but they love to use eyeliner. I feel like this is a good compromise. And I don't want to go too smoky because I feel like my last two looks were literally going to be the same eye look then. But there is this look that I see that is kind of like a whisper of smoke on the eyes, which I'm going to try and recreate. And I don't think they're opposed to glitter, so this is like a little bit of a glittery eyeshadow stick. And it's like a cool brown, almost charcoal brown. I don't really know how to describe it, but I'm just gonna do it all over the lash line and make it thicker as we go out towards the edge, because for my eye shape, which is already quite round, I like to emphasize the outer corner to kind of bring it out like this, like make it look more sultry, pulled out, almost almond shaped, which I feel like is the vibe for this look anyway. But I'm not going to make it super intense. I'm literally just building and blending, and again making it more intense on the outer corner, trying to create a little bit of a wing as well. I hope you guys can see. It's looking a little bit more black than I would like, so I might add a little bit of brown, but you can see I like how it reflects a little bit because it takes away from some of the harshness. I don't know, I've got a little patch here, which is annoying. Okay, I'm gonna use my favorite brown eyeliner, which is actually a lip liner, Barry M Chocolate, and I'm gonna just run it along the lash line and kind of blend it into what I just did to bring more brown into it and like warmish tones. Maybe we go in with a waterline because I feel like most of the looks have that, so the eyeshadow is a little bit more barely there, but I think the eyeliner needs to hit more. I know like I'm using the terms eyeliner and eyeshadow kind of like confusingly, but I think they don't like to use like sparkly or light eyeshadow. I think they like to use pencil liner, or I don't think they like to use liquid liner either from what I've seen. I hope I'm getting this right because I've seen a little bit of mixed things, and I'm trying to go off the consensus of comments from actual Italian women rather than like people just doing Italian makeup videos when they're not actually Italian. But it seems that pencil liner is the go-to, and they kind of use that in replacement of eyeshadow as well. I think this is totally the vibe. Okay, now moving on to mascara. I didn't actually put the entire waterline eyeliner on. Like I kind of stopped around here, by the way. I think it builds up in the eyes too much if they're too close to the center. So yeah, I'm using this really fluffy mascara because the mascara is meant to be super defined, super thick, but not clumpy. So this is Monsieur Big by Lancome, and I didn't wipe off my wand like I normally do just because this is quite used already, so there's not a massive overload of product. But I know a lot of people say they prefer their mascaras when they're like running out, and I do too, and that's why I usually wipe my wand off. I have like so many videos on that, but yeah, just gonna really load it on. But I'm using a very light hand and focusing on the roots. That's how you avoid clumps. If you use a heavy hand and you focus on the entire length of the lashes, that's when it gets clumpy and spidery. But what you want is control to build it up. And I'm also not putting it on the lengths of the eyelashes over here. I'm just doing the lengths of the outer corners. And then I like to do a big like snuggle in and twist, pull out, and this is gonna like comb out any clumps that you may have and really make the lash look super cohesive. Oh my gosh, like looks like I just popped on a full C. I love it. I think something that's important to mention is that Italians have such a vast like different makeup styles throughout the entire country, and also different looks like completely. They have different skin tones, different hair colors, and of course wear different makeup. So I don't want you guys to think I'm like overgeneralizing here and saying this is how all Italians do their makeup, but I'm just trying to do almost, I guess, like the stereotypical makeup, or like the general consensus. And I guess it's more like a going out nighttime look. Yeah, I started on my lips but I didn't press record, but I think the vibe is a defined nude lip for this look. I think what's more common is just pop on a little bit of a gloss, but I think for something more intense, I read that the lip definitely is like vibe based, and I think if we're going more Monica Bellucci vibes, night out vibes, this is the vibe for the lip. I'm just gonna define this. That was the Ciate lip pencil. This is a Huda Beauty. Oh my gosh, like it just applies so beautifully, just so I can define the edges. And this is shade Terracotta Lip Contour. Just really gonna try and define the edge of my lip, and I'm using my double lip line method. I'm gonna take literally the teeny weeniest bit of foundation. A lot of people use concealer for this step, but concealer usually is lighter than foundation. Oh my god, what have I done there? And then it highlights instead of just cleans out the lip, which is not what we want, and then it gets like ghosty. In fact, I might have just done that, but imagine if I use concealer, it would be even worse. Let's just define this lip. I actually think we might be done. I will put on setting spray, but I think it adds a little bit of dew to my look, and I just want to finish this video off while it's not super dewy. In fact, I'm sweating a little bit, so I'm just gonna pat some powder on here. I think we're done. I would love to know your thoughts. I'm so happy to do a part 2 for any of these episodes where I take your comments and redo it based on people who really know what they're talking about, because I'm at the end of the day here to learn and to bring new makeup styles into my routine and onto anyone whose makeup I do as well. I hope you guys like it. Let me know what you think and what I should do next. Give me another country to do.